As you watch the next two segments on prehistoric humans, keep these questions in mind.
What breakthrough technologies did Stone Age people develop?
How have scientists helped us to learn about the lives of prehistoric people?
Millions of years ago, prehistoric humans were just one of many animals competing for survival. But they had something that set them apart from other animals: a growing intelligence and the ability to use tools.
What tools do you use?
My cell phone.
Cell phone?
A computer, which I use all the time, blank piece of paper and a pencil.
Money.
My mouth guard, because I can't participate in lacrosse without it.
A car. I have to go from point A to point B. My brain, home to school.
My most important tool to me is my clothes, so I won't be naked when I go to school.
School to home. My car is my tool. Home to errands.
My Walkman.
Errands to home.
My piano, definitely.
Etc., etc.
$1,700,000 years ago, the world was filled with extreme danger. Just to stay alive was the ultimate challenge. Hunt or be hunted, kill or be killed. This is the story of how we became who we are today. Humans first appeared in East Africa more than 2.5 million years ago. This was the beginning of human evolution. The world they inhabited was a world of predators and scavengers. Early humans, called hominids, lived among large, terrifying beasts. But these hominids were just scavengers, living off the scraps of predators like this saber-toothed cat. This is Homo ergaster. These hominids had the biggest brain so far. Homo ergaster is one of the first human carnivores to walk the earth. But to get meat, they must take on competitors like the saber-toothed cat, venture into the open, and put their lives on the line. For 1 million years, basic stone flakes, sharpened flints, have been used as tools. But to be successful scavengers, these hominids needed a cutting tool as razor-sharp as the saber-toothed canine teeth. These hominids were able to scavenge only one bone and a few shreds of meat. And the marrow in this bone will give them a massive dose of calories, and calories mean energy. It may have taken many, many generations to discover how to manipulate stone to create a sharp two-sided tool. But what this early human is slowly figuring out will be a revolution for humankind, the first of many. This young hominid has created a sharper, more versatile cutting tool, the hand axe. One that will rival the saber-tooth's teeth. know from experiments with dead elephants that the hand axe can slice the toughest hide and break open the biggest bone. This is what these hominids were looking for, and it will bring them one step closer to beating their competitors at finding food. But they would soon discover a more powerful tool that would change everything. A tool more powerful than the hand axe. A tool so powerful with so many uses that all animals cower before it. A tool they must master for their own survival. Fire. Armed with stone tools and a slowly evolving brain, the descendants of Homo ergaster spread out from Africa. Between 1.7 million and about 600,000 years ago, they left just a few small clues about their momentous journey northward. By 300,000 years ago, some of Homo ergaster's more evolved successors, called Homo erectus, were living in the area known today as Western Europe. They had outcompeted every other species of hominid. They used fire to keep warm and to cook their meat, which made it more digestible. They discovered fire's most powerful use yet, in the hunt. Homo erectus are no longer just the scavengers. Now they're predators too. Now extinct, the Irish elk stood 9 feet tall, with antlers 11 feet wide. From long experience, the hunters know that a group is more effective than going it alone. Even one large animal yields so much meat, the risk is worth it. The hunters rely on their instincts and senses, much more so than we do today. They use flanking tactics and expert stalking to drive animals through a narrow gorge and over a cliff. Organization is vital. Language as we know it is still 250,000 years in the future, but these early humans have basic communication skills. They have only a few minutes to get the elk over the cliff. For there's one thing about fire they haven't yet mastered: how to keep their torches lit in damp air. All the experience handed down from generation to generation can't help them here. They're losing control. The hunters have become the hunted. Human evolution is chronicled in part by brain size. Our knowledge of Homo ergaster comes from the 1.6 million year old Nariokotomi boy in Kenya. He was 11. A 10-year-old Homo erectus found in Spain from 785,000 years ago had a larger brain capacity. Today, the hunters have returned with 2 injured men and no meat. Hunting was a hazardous necessity. Findings in Spain tell us that few Homo erectus males lived beyond their teens. Fire has failed them in the hunt, and much about it remains a mystery to them. But they must master all its secrets for survival. Over thousands of years, Homo erectus wrestled with the challenge of keeping flames burning. How did they finally learn to keep fires lit? These people living so close to nature had a vast knowledge of plants, of what was edible and what wasn't, the seasons of wild fruit and berries. And most importantly, the healing power of plants. This gooey substance is pine resin. It can prevent infection, and it's also the source of turpentine, a natural fuel. We'll never know what really unlocked the secret they were looking for. An accident of nature, a lightning strike, careful observation, or just trial and error over thousands of years. But these Homo erectus finally stumbled upon it. They've now mastered the mysteries of fire. It keeps them warm, cooks their food, scares away predators. And with this one discovery, nothing will ever be the same. The rain is the ultimate test. She's the only one who knows the source of the resin. She shares her knowledge of this decaying pine stump. Pine resin has a distinctive smell. Problem-solving, cooperation, and sharing knowledge will be essential to human survival. The pine resin will keep their torches burning. This is exactly what they need. Ebo and others are now well on the path to becoming skillful hunters. They're strong. They're fearless. They know exactly where and when to find their prey. They know how it reacts when chased. and they have the best weapon yet invented. The herd of Irish elk has come face to face with a formidable lethal weapon. Not just fire, but fire plus the human brain. Hunting will become a way of life that will define humankind for the next 300,000 years. From dense accumulations of stone tools and animal bones, we know that Homo erectus hunted in Boxgrove in southern England. There, 500,000 years ago, hunters preyed on deer and bison, driving some of them over a 300-foot cliff. From the layers of bones, we can tell the hunters came here time and time again. Europe's in the grip of the last ice age, a time when great sheets of ice cover much of the land. Scandinavia and the Alps are covered, and sub-zero winters last up to 9 months. Homo erectus has long since died out. It was during a short summer that their evolutionary cousins, these Neanderthals, migrated to this river valley. Skeletons tell us that Neanderthals were short and stocky. They relied on their powerful limbs for stalking and hunting. They hunted the giant steppe bison. Their stone-tipped spears were the most lethal weapons yet. It's close-quarter combat. Their spears are too heavy to throw very far. They must lunge and jab. For the Neanderthals, hunting animals is about survival. They became successful at hunting and surviving. They have become super predators, with no competition from other hominids. Yet. Early humans, including Neanderthals, lived in temporary camps out in the open. But Neanderthals lived in a region with many caves. They could live in them, especially in winter. The cave would become the center of their world. Only a few thousand Neanderthals lived in southern France in small family groups. High nitrogen content discovered in Neanderthal bones is evidence that 85% of their diet was meat, which they supplemented with plants and berries. Neanderthals had a simple but effective toolkit. Better-made tools replaced the hand axe of earlier times. Stone flakes to cut meat, curve-edged scrapers to clean and soften hides, sharp points to punch holes in skins. Like their predecessors, they wasted nothing. Isolated nomadic bands of Neanderthals lived like this for 60,000 years. They lived from day to day. But it didn't last. Snow has been on the ground for months. Even for a people well adapted to the Ice Age cold, this is more than they can bear. The hunters have to travel farther and farther because the beasts they hunt are leaving in their own quest for food. All Doga's found are two puny squirrels. They'll starve to death if they stay here. They know there's nothing back toward the setting sun where they came from. But to the east, toward the rising sun, there's a better place to hunt. They've been there before, but in summer. For the entire band to attempt a winter migration is sure death. Only the strongest hunters will go. By the time of the Neanderthals, humans were capable of at least some basic speech. They had larger brains than their predecessors. But how do we know they could talk? A 60,000-year-old Neanderthal hyoid bone, the bone that anchors the muscles of the vocal cords, was the first evidence of early human speech. It was found in Israel. In their search for food, the hunters travel much farther than their normal hunting range. Northern Europe is now mantled with expanding glaciers and ice caps. The Ice Age has brought enormous changes in the weather. Even their well-adapted physiques are tested to the limit. Neanderthals evolved large noses to warm their breath, and their squat bodies retained heat in the cold climate. But this weather is difficult for them to bear. Just as they give up hope, they find what they're looking for, a rocky outcrop. This is the shelter Neanderthals looked for when they were traveling. Sheer desperation has led them here in deepest winter, with its short daylight hours and sub-zero nights. From compressed layers of ash and charcoal found on cave floors, we know that Neanderthals made fires. They couldn't have survived near the northern ice sheets without them. They share the last of the dried meat. It was easy to carry and one of the first ways of preserving food. They wake up knowing this is the day they must find a beast and kill it. In these harsh conditions, death was not uncommon. We know more about Neanderthals than about any previous humans because they buried their dead. Their remains have been found intact, which means they buried their dead carefully. We may never know if Neanderthals believed in an afterlife, but they were the first to leave such evidence of caring. Only 2 of them are left, and the odds of a successful hunt are stacked against these Neanderthals. Like all early people, their senses are fine-tuned to the presence of animals. They sense that bison can't be that far away. This is what they're looking for. In 15 feet of snow, it's difficult to maneuver, especially with heavy stone-tipped spears. To get close enough, they must be careful. Bison are easily alarmed. But they're not alone out here. He sees his chance. The bison has been felled. The Neanderthals have been beaten to the kill, but by whom? They're face to face with 2 strangers who are thin and have round heads. These are not people like the Neanderthals. They have swift, much lighter spears they can throw. For hundreds of thousands of years, the Neanderthals had been the only inhabitants of Europe, but not anymore. Their place in history will be taken by a new race of humans. They bear an antler-tipped spear, so far the most advanced weapon created by man. And they have all the brain power and abilities we have today. The Neanderthals' encounter with newcomers signals the beginning of the end. they've met the Cro-Magnons. These new people, Homo sapiens, will become the greatest hunters of them all, the undisputed masters of our planet. They will become us. Did you know the climate and diet of our ancestors affects how we look today? Climate affects body shape. In cold environments, humans tended to be shorter and more stocky to retain heat. Diet also affects height. Hunter-gatherers were taller than settlers in the ancient communities that first turned to farming for their food.
The world is becoming more and more interconnected. But new evidence might prove that we're even more interconnected than we thought.
Where does your family come from?
My great-grandparents are from Italy.
India, the Philippines.
Well, I'm 1/4 Scottish.
Italian.
My dad's family is from England and my mom's family is from Russia.
British and Norwegian.
3/4 English
100%
and 1/4 Scottish.
Greek.
100% Italian.
Nigeria. Russia.
I'm from Taiwan,
Russia.
but I'm Chinese.
Ireland, Italy, England, and Germany.
New Jersey.
I'm from a lot of places.
More than 6 billion people live on planet Earth today. Where did we all come from? "150,000 years ago, the world was in the grip of an ice age, a period where ice sheets covered vast regions of land. During this time, the first modern humans lived in Africa. What were they like? Archaeologists have figured out a lot about how early humans lived by looking at the things they left behind. We know that early humans designed tools, understood the seasons, and were skilled hunters. But scientists studying genes, the building blocks that make us who we are, have found evidence that has led to an incredible discovery. What did they find? That all humans may be descended from one woman who lived in Africa 150,000 years ago. They call her Eve. Though she was not the only woman living in East Africa then, a special part of her DNA, the blueprint of life carried in our genes, was stronger than all of the rest. So strong that all of us have a part of it today. But how is it possible that one woman's DNA was passed down over thousands of years? This special part of Eve's DNA is the mitochondrion. This tiny structure is found inside nearly all human cells. It is separate from the DNA that makes you tall or short or gives you green eyes. Children inherit mitochondrial DNA from their mothers, and only women can pass it on. Also called maternal DNA, mitochondrial DNA has been passed from mother to daughter throughout human history. Harmless changes happen in the mitochondrial DNA each time it is passed to another generation. These changes leave a tiny marker like a barcode, which scientists can read. By tracing the markers backwards, scientists formed a genetic family tree for all humanity. Professor Rebecca Kahn was one of the pioneering scientists who uncovered the first all-important clue.
I'd put 20 Europeans and 20 African Americans on a sheet of X-ray film, and every African American showed differences, and all the Europeans looked the same. And we kept repeating and repeating things, and as we got more samples from different areas, I realized that it was a difference in the pattern, and that this whole new type of evidence based on mitochondria was going to change the way we thought about modern humans.
Amazingly, the research showed that everyone outside of Africa had similar mitochondrial DNA. That means that not only are we all from Africa originally, but we may all share the same ancestor, Eve. And this is what she looked like. By using computers to add muscles and skin to a 120,000-year-old skull found in Africa, scientists have been able to recreate what our genetic mother Eve might have looked like. Professor Stephen Oppenheimer is an expert in genetic research and DNA tracking. By putting together the genetic family tree and prehistoric weather patterns, he believes that our ancestors all came out of Africa by a single southern route.
This beach is on the west coast of the Red Sea, the African side. Over on the other side we can see the mountains of Yemen. I believe this is where our ancestors crossed on the first stage of their journey to the rest of the world. These straits are known locally to fishermen as the Gates of Grief because of the terrible fierce currents crossing. But 80,000 years ago, the sea level was 150 foot further down. As a result, a number of islands and reefs appeared, which allowed our ancestors to cross, as it were, on stepping stones over to the Yemen. There are two routes out of Africa. The north of the Red Sea, across the Suez and into the Middle East, and here in the south, across the Gates of Grief, into the Yemen, and on through the South Arabian coast to India. Both routes are possible, but to get through to the north, our ancestors would have had to have crossed the Sahara Desert. And at the time, it was even drier than it is today. Here in the south, all they had to do was to cross this short stretch of water, only 10 miles across, to the Yemen. So this was a region they could go to with confidence.
Those who survived the crossing came to an untouched land, a new frontier, and the opening to the rest of the world. We know Eve was among the survivors because her DNA survives today in everyone outside of Africa. Once they had left Africa, our ancestors split up, some going north and west, some going east and south. They started new lives and began to change in their new environments. But no matter how far they spread across the world, or how different they began to look or act, they all shared an unbroken genetic chain that linked them and us to the past and to each other.
You've been given all the information. Now it's your turn to discuss the questions. Take a moment to talk about the following.
What breakthrough technologies did Stone Age people develop?
How have scientists helped us learn about the lives of ancient people?
If you'd like to learn more about what you've just seen, go online or check out these books at your local library.
As you watch the next two segments, keep these questions in mind.
What do the artifacts people leave behind tell us about them?
What role did water play in shaping early civilizations? Archaeologists and other scientists can learn a lot about ancient people by looking at what they left behind. Sometimes even things like the clothes they wore can open a window into their lives.
What do your clothes say about you?
I think I tried to display what kind of person I am through what I wear.
I dress very uniquely. Clothing really doesn't pull off an image, except if you really wear something exotic.
A lot of more mature looking wear.
My necklace, my friend actually gave it to me, and it's lyrics.
Usually what I wear is pretty plain.
It's just kind of a way to express myself, maybe distinguish myself from everybody else.
Usually I go with whatever my mood is.
I really don't care what people think.
I think it's human nature to judge people, whether it's right or wrong, by how they look.
The exploration of human history has led scientists all over the globe and far back into prehistoric times, the long period before people used systems of writing. Prehistoric people had no cities, countries, centralized governments, or complex inventions. That makes it especially difficult for us to understand how prehistoric people lived. But a body found on a mountaintop on the border of Italy and Austria has given us a glimpse into how some of our ancestors might have lived and died. This body is the oldest human ever found, a man 5,300 years old. Naturally mummified by cold, dry air, the body is one of the most important Neolithic discoveries of its kind. Scientists call him Ötzi, the Iceman. From examination of his 5,300-year-old remains, scientists believe that Ötzi was murdered, killed by an arrow in the back.
Next check now. But the
items found with his body, the clothes he wore and tools he used, tell a story too. A copper axe forces scientists to rethink when humans first began using copper. This is evidence that pushes it back some 500 years earlier. An unfinished bow and arrows, a woven grass cloak and goatskin leggings. Each article is a clue about Ötzi's life. One theory was that Ötzi was a shepherd. After all, shepherds still walk the same path where the Iceman was found, as they have for centuries. They travel this route each year, moving their livestock over the mountains to alpine pastures. If Ötzi was a shepherd, he could have been killed for his sheep. Two anthropologists, Sylvia Reinhardt and Hans Plotzkummer, study the characteristics and customs of different people around the world. They are joined by Anna Pedrati, an archaeologist who studies ancient tools. They are eager to put Ötzi's clothes to a test. They want to see whether they could have been worn by a shepherd. They've made an exact duplicate of each item for Hans to wear. It's a brand new kind of archaeological experiment. No one has ever investigated how these clothes actually worked. Would they have been up to the tough life of an alpine shepherd? It's time to find out. As Hans sets off up the mountain, Sylvia and Anna take the easy route by helicopter. Following in the Iceman's path is a grueling 4,000-foot climb for Hans. From the mountaintop, Sylvia and Anna can see that Hans is having trouble. Modern-day sheep herders use shovels to help them climb. Hans resorts to using the Iceman's axe. Finally, he arrives, exhausted. His shoes were a disaster. They had no traction, and they didn't keep out the melted snow at all. But Hans also has good news. The cloak felt as warm as a winter jacket. The mysterious unstrung bow became the perfect climbing staff, and the copper axe was indispensable for helping Hans anchor himself on steep bits of the climb.
This experiment went very good, because it's the first time that we had the idea that we use the bow and also the axe for climbing up. And also we see that the shoes are totally broken and it's wet inside. And this is the result of the experiment. That's very good.
Thanks to their work, now we know that Utsi probably wasn't a shepherd because his shoes were so poorly designed for the task. We may never know exactly who Utsi was or why he was killed. But he has given us a valuable link to the past. By studying both his body and the nearby artifacts, we understand a little more about this man and what the lives of these ancient people must have been like. Did you know, since they are cut off from the rest of the world by oceans, the Americas were one of the last places for humans to settle? Many believe that we first came here by walking over a land bridge from Siberia to Alaska, and then spread from North America to South America, forming distinctive cultures.
One of the most successful civilizations of the ancient world grew up in Egypt. Commerce, agriculture, and art flourished there, and the River Nile was at the heart of it all.
What's the heart of your school?
The assembly area.
Definitely the senior couches. That's where all the activity goes down. The upper commons, lower commons.
Safe room. The entrance. It's like separate from the cafeteria, so it's nice and quiet.
Couches. We always hang out there whenever free time between classes or after school.
For me, it's the attic theater.
The theater.
Probably the lunchroom. To me, the classroom is the most important place.
Throughout history, water has been at the heart of the growth of civilization. And nowhere is this more clear than in Egypt, along the banks of the River Nile. The River Nile flows for 4,000 miles, from the heart of Africa to the Mediterranean Sea, northward. The river floods once a year. Each time, it soaks the desert land of Egypt with water and deposits a layer of rich silt, or fine soil. This makes the Nile Valley a good place to grow food and other agricultural goods. But food was not the only thing that sprang up along the Nile. It's also where the Egyptian civilization grew. How did the Nile promote civilization? To control the Nile's annual floods, people cooperated to build dikes and irrigation ditches. These channeled the rising river and helped the people store water for the dry season. People needed to work together to survive. As more and more people moved to the region and worked together, a powerful river civilization emerged. Ancient Egypt was made up of two regions, Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north. Both depended on the river's waters. About 3100 BC, Menes, the king of Upper Egypt, united the two regions. He and his successors used the Nile like a highway between northern and southern Egypt. Officials and armies could get to all the towns along the river to make sure people did what the king wanted. In this way, the Nile helped make Egypt the world's first unified state. But the United States needed a bigger food supply to grow. By irrigating the land around the Nile, the Egyptians grew the food their growing civilization needed. What helped irrigation and farming develop in Egypt? It was the invention of the shadoof. With a bucket at one end and a weight at the other, the shadoof works like a seesaw to raise water from one level to another. Its invention led to a dramatic increase in irrigated land because now people could easily move water where they needed it. The Egyptians also built their civilization with the wealth generated by the Nile. In addition to the food it provided, the Nile also provided transportation. Traders from elsewhere on the continent brought a constant supply of goods down the river. Gold, ivory, ebony, incense, and furs from tropical Africa flooded in to increase the pharaoh's wealth. Egyptian merchants traveled up and down the Nile in sailboats and barges made of papyrus, a riverbank reed that can grow 15 feet tall. Papyrus was also a vehicle for language and ideas. By beating it into flat strips and pressing it together, Egyptians made the first paper. The wealth the Nile provided allowed the Egyptians to build great buildings and monuments. The pyramids of Giza are the largest stone structures ever built. Pyramids were built as majestic tombs for the pharaohs of Egypt. How were these great tombs built? There's a popular idea that slaves built the pyramids, but scientists now think that off-season farmers did the work. Driven from their land by the Nile's annual floods, the farmers were eager to earn a living during the 3 months when their fields were underwater. And they built the pyramids using mud from the Nile. The history of ancient Egypt as a river civilization is tied to the Nile. For 5,000 years, the statues of the pharaohs have stood guard over the river. They are enduring monuments to the river and the civilization it helped create.
You've been given all the information. Now it's your turn to discuss the questions. Take a moment to talk about the following.
What do the artifacts people leave behind tell us about them?
What role did water play in shaping early civilizations?
We hope you've enjoyed this assignment discovery journey into human history. If you'd like to learn more about what you've just seen, go online or check out these books at your local library.